Somewhere deep in the Virginia woods lies the first line of defense for the United States of America, the CIA headquarters. It is the world's most heavily guarded building. Few civilians have ever been allowed inside. Yet within these walls, more PhDs than in an average university work routinely with the technology of science fiction. For this is truly a fortress beyond imagination, and a legacy that has helped to define history. We are going inside. Never before, and never again, will anyone delve so deeply into stories uncovering mysteries that until now have remained classified. This will be a journey beyond America's front line, into the heart of the Central Intelligence Agency. Every day, the CIA receives intelligence information from foreign lands which must be processed and given to policymakers who determine matters of national security. The Director of Central Intelligence, George Tenet, answers directly to the President.
The mission, if I reduced it to its simplest form, would be to make America safer and allow us to pursue our national interests in a way that gives the President the greatest amount of effectiveness he can in pursuing the national security interests of the United States.
The CIA will be the first to admit past mistakes. Few, however, have heard the tales of tragedies averted as a result of crucial intelligence generated by the agency. Former Director of Central Intelligence, President George Bush.
There's very little reason to expect that the American people would understand the quality or the dedication of the men and women that make up CIA. So much is done for legitimate classification purposes in secrecy.
Secrets that have been kept buried behind these walls. CIA headquarters is comprised of two distinct buildings. The OHB, or Original Headquarters Building, was built from 1959 until 1963. It takes up nearly 9 of the 258 acres of land that make up the entire CIA compound in Langley, Virginia. Groundbreaking ceremonies for the NHB, or New Headquarters Building, took place May 8, 1984. The building was completely operational by March 1991. Both buildings take up a combined space of over 2.5 million square feet. They're guarded with the highest level of security. Civilians, for the most part, are prohibited. Each day, thousands of CIA employees file into headquarters. The actual number is classified as many work undercover. Tace Brandon has been a member of the agency's clandestine service for over a quarter of a century. He has witnessed and contributed to years of innovation.
If you look up our surveillance airplane, the SR-71 Blackbird, I will now admit to the fact that with 35-year-old aviation technology and 35-year-old cameras, from 85,000 feet, the SR-71 could take pictures of golf balls on a putting green. And it probably wouldn't be incorrect if you assumed we could also read whether that was a Titleist or a Wilson. If it existed 35 years ago, and you can just sort of extrapolate and imagine the kind of things that are done now.
Each day, the CIA is charged with transforming raw information into finished intelligence that can be used by policymakers. In order to most effectively handle this task, the CIA is comprised of 4 separate components, or directorates. They are the Directorates of Administration, Intelligence, Science and Technology, and Operations. The Directorate of Administration is the largest. Its mission, handling the agency's vast and complex daily operations. Richard Calder is the Deputy Director for Administration.
Some people say I'm the mayor of the agency. We basically enable the mission directorates to do their job.
A job that includes the handling of top secret information.
We're in the historical intelligence collection portion of the agency's library, and some of these boxes behind me have really interesting titles on them, and there's not a scholar anywhere in the world who wouldn't give anything to get in here and have run of the place.
We operate on a principle that says that if you have need to know, the information, then you can have access to it. If you don't have a need to know that information, then that information is usually not made available to you.
From kitchen workers to covert operations directors, there is not a single person working on the CIA compound who doesn't have a designated security clearance.
Top secret is just one of the levels of secrecy and classification, and it's certainly not the top level of secrecy. There are levels of confidentiality and compartmentation above top secret. The name of the classification is in fact a secret.
For security purposes, access to all areas within headquarters is restricted to those with proper clearance for that designated area.
We work that through a variety of mechanisms in how we control our file system, how we control access to certain databases, how we control access to certain spaces within the building.
The building structure itself is equipped with countermeasures to keep secrets within safe. Both buildings are shielded in copper to keep potential enemies from intercepting electromagnetic signals emanating from computers. Technology has also advanced to a point where high-tech laser bugging devices can detect the vibration of keystroke patterns and voices off glass windows. Consequently, the entire new headquarters building was built with an outer shell, creating a building within a building. To ensure further protection, white noise is pumped between the two layers to drown out even the slightest exposure of top-secret material. Inside, hallways are lined with winding baffles designed to keep conversations within the building.
We are constantly looking at how to balance the needs of security with the needs of our customers to deal with and have available to them information.
With millions of top-secret documents being generated, measures must be taken to properly discard printed paperwork. All employees have separate classified waste baskets at their desk.
We make them transparent, those little buckets, so that people will realize as they're leaving at night that they're leaving classified trash out, so they won't accidentally leave something out that they either want to lock up or they would want to destroy.
The baskets are dumped into paper burn bags. They are discarded down special trash chutes located throughout the building. The bags are collected and are sent off to an incinerator located on the premises.
We have a team that works overnight, destroying every night all of the material.
Due to the exposure of millions of classified documents, this team is comprised of workers possessing the highest level of security clearance possible. They must open the burn bags so the documents can be properly shredded. Then burned in the incinerator. Unless burned properly, information can still be retrieved even from ashes. This required the CIA to engineer a specific burning process. Even the ashes are routinely checked, then mulched. Attempts have been made to make use of this burned classified waste.
We've actually tried to use the energy that we create from the burning of our trash to actually go back into heating our building.
Such innovations are part of the overall design to keep the CIA compound operating with the independence of a self-sufficient city. The CIA must never be left vulnerable during times of natural disaster or terrorist attack.
This is the equivalent to the bowels of the Titanic. This is the room that keeps this building running. Over here we have the air handling units. We pull all our outside air in, we filter it, then we heat it or cool it depending on what. Right now we're in the cooling mode because the computer center requires cooling all year round. Down here, our main electrical distribution system. This valve is set up in case we were to lose commercial power or even have any kind of slight disruption, we can run right through it. And what that makes that possible is batteries. Just batteries, batteries, and more batteries. They're like car batteries, only bigger. And we have hundreds of them down here. If we were to lose power, these take over, and you would see nothing. The computers wouldn't know they'd lost power.
This uninterrupted power supply would allow time for the CIA's fully operational generator, powered by jet engines, to kick in and enable the on-site power plant to keep the entire complex operational.
We could run this facility with our own generators if we had to. There's a big water tower here that provides adequate water for the facility if we were to lose water for a reasonable period of time. We feel fairly comfortable here that for any of the normal interruptions that you might experience, that we are capable of operating this facility without interruption.
This includes a health facility, which offers routine medical services on a daily basis, as well as in-depth medical exams for officers who may be headed to hostile areas around the world. Due to the secluded nature of the compound, some of life's other amenities are also included.
We have 2 gyms here for our employees to use. We have a very big library. We have internet connection that they can work off of from the library. We do have a contract with a very reputable caterer who provides us with meals 5 days a week for both breakfast, lunch, and in some cases some late evening meals, but those are very rare.
Due to the sensitive nature of everyone's job, years ago covert and overt employees ate in separate dining rooms. Today they dine together, but badges still show only faces, no names. It's not uncommon for employees to eat together for years and not know each other's real identity or function. This self-contained fortress, affectionately referred to as the campus, must have all of the resources available to act as a 24-hour information machine.
This agency really does need all of its very many multifaceted capabilities working in an integrated fashion to do what we do, which is produce a finished intelligence product for the policymaker.
This finished intelligence product would not be possible if it weren't for the CIA's ability to effectively collect information. 90% of it is acquired through open sources such as television and newspapers. This is all monitored by Global Operations, the agency's first alert center. The remainder comes from satellite images and spies who perform covert operations in foreign lands.
First and foremost, the CIA works for the President of the United States. But we also work for the American people, and we do that through a congressional oversight process that no other country in the world has for its intelligence service.
Congressman Porter Goss is the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
My committee is very important. Much of what goes on in the intelligence community is hidden. It's not in the public view. Consequently, we have to have very strong oversight to make sure that what does go on out of public view is appropriate for the American standard, complies with the American law, and that nothing untoward is going on under this cloak of secrecy.
It is a part of a myth in the minds of some, but I think a really very limited number that CIA is this omnipresent organization that watches U.S. citizens. We do not do that. We have absolutely no charter, no law enforcement charter, and no charter to engage in activities directed against U.S. personnel. We do not operate in the United States. Our job is to provide U.S. policymakers with foreign intelligence, and the key word there is foreign.
Foreign information which is then sent to the Directorate of Intelligence, where it is processed and analyzed. John McLaughlin is Deputy Director for Intelligence.
The intelligence product takes many forms. Sometimes it's a briefing of a senior official. More often it's a piece of paper that goes to the President or some other senior official of government.
When global crises develop, the agency formulates situational task forces to manage the crises until it's over. Such is the case with the Balkan Task Force.
Essentially, we're in the heart, if you will, of the Balkan Task Force. The Balkan Task Force is an interagency operation with people from all the different elements of the intelligence community brought together here in Langley to analyze what's going on the ground in the Balkans.
Knowing how well the different sides are doing on the battlefield, and in some cases over specific towns, is very important, because how willing the side was to negotiate a ceasefire or agree to part of the peace agreement really hinged on how well the different sides are doing on the battlefield.
As the technology revolution explodes, new sources of information are constantly available. The CIA must monitor all possible information to ensure they have their fingers on the pulse of the world.
The new mission of the intelligence community has a much more global reach as opposed to the focus on the Soviet Union. And so therefore, our demand for information in countries that have never been intelligence priorities can be satisfied by this openly available unclassified information.
We generate a lot of information, and so one of the things we have to be better at is aggregating it in a way that it is easily retrievable, and we do that reasonably well.
Deep within the nerve center of the CIA are massive computer databases, affectionately named the Seven Dwarfs. They store billions of bits of information. Information so expansive it must be retrieved with the aid of robotic computers.
If one were to look inside one of the Seven Dwarfs, our huge tape storage devices, one would be unimpressed by just seeing a tape with a barcode on it. But on that tape, hidden in the particles of iron, are images taken by satellites. They're open source information taken from newspapers from around the world. There's intelligence and analysis that's there, signal intercepts, and information actually gained from human sources.
The task we face is sorting through this enormous amount of information, and to do that, we are devising new techniques, new software packages that are able to search this data better, mine it, extract it, visualize it, display it. In one case, for example, we are taking the virtual reality technology that's used in the entertainment industry and applying it to enabling us to see certain kinds of data that we collect electronically in a three-dimensional way.
We say that our analysts in the next 10 years are going to have to be able to process 10 times more information than they do today at their desktop. That means technology has to provide you the analytical tools to sift through lots of information.
Historian Keith Melton recalls a lesson learned from the Cold War.
Look, for example, at the East German intelligence service, the Stasi, one of the most Orwellian services during the Cold War. But they literally were gathering information so massively that they drowned themselves in a sea of information. They could collect it with wonderful efficiency, but they didn't have the ability to process it and analyze it.
Our analysts sit around and look at a trillion-piece puzzle. It's everything that goes on regionally around the world. It's things that are going on politically, militarily, economically in a specific country. And the analysts invariably don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, but they still have to come up with a mosaic of what it is we're looking at.
We insist that our analysts ask the what-if questions. What if there were to be a problem with the security of Russian nuclear weapons? What would that mean in terms of danger to the United States?
We make judgments, very professional judgments. When we get it wrong, I have a responsibility to stand up in front of the American people and say, we didn't get this right. And I have to tell the American people that we will always be surprised. There is no perfection in this business. There is a lot of risk-taking involved.
To say that we're going to be able to do it all is asking too much. What we have to decide is what we want the intelligence community to rightfully do and reasonably expect it can do with the resources that we give it and the amount of funding to make those resources work well.
Most people in this country could not possibly know, nor, I think, would they want to know how many World Trade Center bombings would have occurred, how many Pan Am 103 flights would have taken place. If we weren't doing our jobs, this agency has to produce.
In order to facilitate that edge, the CIA compiles what it deems its most important product, the President's Daily Brief.
Well, every morning, somebody from CIA would appear, and he'd be bringing with them a thing called the President's Daily Brief. We refer to it as the PDB. It had very narrow distribution. Everybody wanted to read it.
It's the President's daily newspaper that's classified. The document says for the President's eyes only. It is also provided to about between 10 and 15 other senior foreign policy and national security leaders in the country.
In a way, it's the embodiment of why Harry Truman created this agency in 1947. People often say it's a byproduct of the Cold War, but it really isn't. CIA is more a byproduct of Pearl Harbor, and Harry Truman's determination to avoid the kind of dangerous surprise that was inflicted on the United States then.
Because of the classified nature of documents generated at CIA, it was necessary for the agency to build its own state-of-the-art printing press located at headquarters. Each night, analysts with top-secret clearance worked feverishly. Before sunrise, they must compile, write, edit, and publish the President's Brief. Printing press employees have the highest level of clearance. As a further precautionary measure, they are trained to avoid reading any of the millions of documents they print. It's the most expensive, least circulated newspaper in the world. One good decision based on the information contained in its pages could justify its cost in both dollars and human life.
Our purpose is every day to provide them with a newspaper on the world. Again, focused on information they won't read in the New York Times or the Washington Post or hear on NBC News.
Early that morning, a senior analyst arrives at the Global Ops Center. He looks over the documents and is then briefed on last-minute developments. Moments later, the journey to the White House begins.
I get here about 4 in the morning and spend about 2.5 hours preparing to go down to the White House in order to brief the folks down there. And I put together a package of materials for a number of people and go down, give them the packages, talk to them about the package, and mention a few other things to them that they may not be aware about. Take questions, take taskings that they have, bring it back to Langley. We discuss that, and then the next day, whatever requests they have normally been satisfied in the new package that's been prepared.
The CIA's daily brief that goes to the President every day and related information that comes to the United States Congress is critical for the decision makers in this country. You could simply say that we could go along for a while without that information and make decisions, and you've got a 50% chance, I suppose, of being right. Why not take advantage of this fabulous information? Because if you get it wrong and it involves national security, that's a terrible mistake to make.
I don't think a president can do his job without access to the best intelligence in the world. And different presidents do it differently. I used to read that PDB every single morning and sit there with somebody from CIA and with my national security advisor.
It seeks to take what is publicly available and add to it classified information that we've obtained from technical and human sources in order to give the President the most accurate picture of things that are of concern to him that day and in the immediate future.
One such area of concern is the rapidly advancing technology available to foreign countries.
As technology keeps changing and improving, intelligence services need to always be ahead of the changes.
In order to keep up with the latest technology on the market, the CIA regularly invites representatives from the private sector to display and demonstrate their most current high-end products. Products the CIA may adapt and modify to accommodate their special needs.
We have depended for many years on proprietary homegrown technology, which was expensive to maintain, and using commercial technology today we can do that much less expensively.
Although private sector technology is utilized, the CIA is still very much involved in developing its own resources for its classified operations. This is the role of the Directorate of Science and Technology. Within this directorate is the Office of Technical Services. Tony Mendez is a former senior technical operations officer.
Those who know James Bond will remember Q branch, and Q, the individual who came and gave James Bond whatever technical gadget he needed for that particular mission. Well, OTS is loosely the true Q of CIA.
Tony's wife, Jana Mendez, is also a former technical operations officer.
The officers are in a wide range of geographic locations, dealing with all sorts of operational problems. And they would bring those problems to OTS, where we had chemists, physicists, engineers, mechanical, electrical, photographers, most disciplines that you would expect to be represented, and then some very far out disciplines also.
We were doing part of the work that is needed throughout all kinds of espionage operations, where you make the documents that go with the false identities that you have to use.
During the Cold War, they exfiltrated more than 150 spies out of hostile situations, and disguise played a dominant role in assisting spies to leave the country without being identified.
disguise, one of the important elements used by OTS. During their careers, both Tony and Jana Mendez served as the agency's chief of disguise.
We can change the way you walk. We can change your mannerisms. We cannot make you shorter. We can make you taller. We can't make you thinner, but we can make you fatter. And we do that quite frequently.
CIA is not at liberty to discuss the disguise techniques used in undercover operations, espionage that is still going on today. They did admit that their methods were not unlike those used in Hollywood, with one exception.
In Hollywood, you can have as many takes as you want and burn as much film as you care to.
The difference with our officers, most of the disguises are put on not in front of a big well-lit mirror. They're put on in cars. They're put on in the dark. They're put on the road. And you don't get any second shots.
The Office of Technical Services within the CIA houses some of the most inventive and creative minds in the intelligence service.
If you can imagine it, we could figure out a way to do it.
The CIA must continue to enlist dedicated individuals committed to its mission and ideals. In order to obtain these resources, the agency actively seeks out the best minds the country has to offer. Gil Medeiros is the director of CIA recruitment.
We have a national recruitment program. We recruit for something like 35 different occupational areas in the agency.
We are the Central Intelligence Agency, and you have to possess intelligence in order to go out and acquire it.
The cornerstone of what we do is people, and attracting the best and brightest young people to come work for the CIA and our intelligence community. We offer a bigger challenge and a bigger mission and more responsibility than anybody can offer you.
Recruitment efforts to obtain these skilled individuals may be as varied as print advertisements to college fairs.
We're attracting some of the best scholars in the country. So you have to have an excellent grade point average. You have to demonstrate to us that you can work in teams. You have to demonstrate to us that you can communicate with others.
We're looking for ordinary people who can really do extraordinary things. Being an operations officer or a collection management officer for the CIA, the Directorate of Operations is a way of life. You're not going to work from 8 to 5 and going home. You're going to work from 8 to 5, then you're going out to a cocktail reception, and then maybe the next night you're going to have to go out to an agent meeting.
Potential recruits are subject to a polygraph examination. Questions concerning personal history and moral integrity are necessary to ensure the agency's high standards. Employees must also answer questions regarding personal conduct and possible security violations.
Have you ever committed espionage against the United States of America?
No.
This is some of the best talent that we can find in the United States of America. They are good at what they do. They are excellent scholars. We have checked them. We've looked at their lives. We know they're trustworthy people. Please raise your right hand.
Once chosen, new recruits are sworn in during a modest ceremony. It is perhaps the only time they will be acknowledged. Soon, many will be undercover in foreign lands. Never before has a civilian been permitted to observe such a ceremony. For their security, we were allowed to film only the backs of their heads.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties.
Of the office on which I am about to enter.
Of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God. Congratulations. You're now employees of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Once sworn in, recruits immediately begin training. The most intensive is reserved for those who will become officers in the most covert and clandestine arm of the agency, the Directorate of Operations.
The Directorate of Operations is literally the heart and soul of the CIA. These are the men and women who risk their lives on foreign shores.
The people that we want to recruit to become case officers who live overseas, spies, if you will, people who commit espionage, people who get other people to commit espionage on behalf of the United States. There's a very rigorous training program that we put them through.
We in fact do, rappel down the side of buildings, sneak into buildings, dig tunnels. We steal secrets. That's what the Directorate of Operations does.
Few are actually selected to become members of the Directorate of Operations. It is the smallest and most secretive part of the agency. The training of these operations officers takes place at a top-secret facility known as the Farm.
We look for people who know how to function anonymously now. That's just the nature of our work. Obviously, I'm passionate about the people that work for us because I think they're terrific. But we also have demands on them.
Less than 10% of CIA employees actually go through this intensive training.
There's a biblical phrase, I think, that applies: many are called, but few are chosen. This is not for everyone. This is a very exacting business.
They are the tip of our spear. They are the ones out front. They are the ones risking their lives.
For the first time, a top official from the agency's clandestine service has agreed to speak about the role of operations officer.
First, I think it's important to say that as a matter of routine, it has been a part of this business that we don't talk about. That said, the clandestine aspect of this organization is the one which does our work overseas. It is our job to acquire information for senior policymakers and for our customers, and to acquire that in a non-conventional manner.
What we do, and what we do well, is not act as spies ourselves, because in the agency parlance, we are not agents. We're operations officers, and we recruit people who work for us. They are our spies. They are our agents. So what we are, in effect, are spy masters. We're like puppeteers with people on strings that we have convinced through all manner of motivation to provide us information that we need.
To prevent potential harm to its officers or spies, the CIA must be protective of their sources and of the methods used to obtain its heavily guarded secrets.
A source or a method is the lifeblood of the business I'm in. I am charged both by law, if you will, and by practice to protect that. If I do not protect my source, if I do not protect my method, I will not have sources, nor will I have methods that apply in the clandestine world. The fundamental part of this business, we will not give up our sources. We will protect them at all costs. We will not give up our methods, and we will protect those methods at all costs.
The lives that have been lost in the years after the CIA was created have been generally from the director of operations.
They are the ones, in most cases, whose most profound service and dedication is represented on the wall in the entrance to our main lobby with individual stars chiseled in the granite wall, commemorating the death of CIA officers who have given their lives in the line of duty. A truly profound statement about the nature of this work and the lifestyle that being an ops officer entails. In the Book of Honor, under the stars, of the 78 stars that are there, not even half of the entries list a name. Even in death, we remain anonymous because we are, in fact, the Shadow Warriors.
We do all we can to avoid that kind of a loss, but at the end of the day, there are certain dangers that come with serving in the foreign environment. I hold them in the highest regard. I honor those who have given their lives in service to country and to this organization, and it's in that sequence, to country and organization, and say a prayer for them regularly.
Their friends and neighbors often don't know what they do, and their recognition is the recognition we bestow upon ourselves behind these walls.
They go home every night and no one ever knows what they spent their day doing. It is our habit not to talk, and it's hard to break those habits. But I have to tell you, the whole time I've been speaking to you, I have been, I've had my colleagues over my shoulder.
I wish I could tell more people more stories, and increasingly we have been able to tell a few more stories.
The following story comes from deep within the CIA top-secret files. This is the story of the agency's involvement in the rescue of an ordinary American citizen held in a Panamanian prison. The agency's role in this mission, until now, classified.
In the late 80s, General Noriega was running a dictatorship in Panama and was engaged in supporting the flow of principally cocaine from Colombia into the United States through Panama.
Retired CIA officer John Mallett was in charge of CIA operations in Panama at the time.
Wherever the U.S. government has a major problem, you will find the CIA trying to contribute to the solution to that problem, and that was certainly the case in Panama.
Kurt Muse was an American citizen who moved to Panama with his family at an early age. He recalls Noriega's reign of terror.
He was power hungry, and he was ruining the country that I love very much, the country that had welcomed me and my family with open arms, and I felt powerless to do anything.
Demonstrations against Noriega's regime erupted.
People who normally didn't get involved in going out on the streets to oppose the regime were out there protesting. And I can recall some horrendous repression of some of those demonstrations as well.
It wasn't long before Muse and a small group of like-minded Panamanians began efforts to destabilize Noriega's rule.
We bought scanners and began listening to the Panamanian army on their radio frequencies.
He, in conjunction with some of his Panamanian friends and colleagues, mounted their own efforts to disrupt and be basically an annoyance, a thorn in the side of Noriega.
It was only a matter of time before Muse and his group found a way to broadcast messages of hope over popular government radio stations.
We were listening to General Noriega's speech, and you could hear in the background, and now we present to you General Manuel Antonio Noriega. And the crowd, as you hear them cheering, and all of a sudden, we hit the transmit button. He went dead. And then our message came on the air.
The message was one of hope, a message to fight the system and to register to vote. Noriega was outraged and intent on finding those responsible for the broadcasts. Eventually, Muse was caught and arrested. He was interrogated in an attempt to prove that he was the one Panamanians called the voice of liberty.
On one occasion, they took me to an old prison downtown, and they actually tortured someone in front of me. There's no sound in all of humanity that's worse than that of a man being tortured.
Muse himself was submitted to days of sleep deprivation and mental torture.
The door slams open, and one of the colonels comes in, and he screams at the top of his lungs,
"You've been lying to us! It's true! You've been lying to us all along!"
I'm looking at the filing cabinet in front of me, and I'm thinking where the bullet's going to go. And it's going to hit that filing cabinet. And it's going to probably go in 6 or 8 inches. And it's going to ruin those files. And there's going to be blood everywhere. This guy's got to be bluffing. And sure enough, it was a bluff. And he uncocked his gun, and he left.
Muse's bravery held, but his luck didn't. A search of an apartment which he had keys to turned up the broadcasting equipment. His cover was blown.
And they determined without a shadow of a doubt that I was, in fact, Radio La Voz de la Libertad.
Muse was held captive in Modelo Prison, known for its subhuman conditions and history of brutal beatings and torture. Months passed, and his hopes for release started to wane. He found ways to smuggle letters back to the United States through doctors who were granted periodic access to check his physical condition.
I wrote a letter to President Bush where I explained to him who I was, where I was, and what was being done on my behalf, and what I suggested he do. I worked this letter into the binding of a book. I opened it up, slid it in there real carefully, and sealed it up. It was delivered to the White House.
President Bush decided something had to be done.
Foremost in my mind was the rescue of this citizen. And I learned it when I was a pilot, shot down in World War II. I knew that I might be captured. I could see the island, Japanese island, but I also knew that they would go the extra mile, the Navy would, to be sure I was rescued.
That is what is so incredible about our country. You know, one person does matter that much.
Immediately, a multi-agency rescue operation was initiated.
Plans were made to
extricate him from captivity, and we had a specific role to play in assisting that.
The first step was to gather information about the prison. Overhead images, as well as first-hand accounts collected by the CIA, were utilized.
They were gleaning information from various sources about my prison, about how to get in, about how to get around.
Essentially what you do is you find anyone who has knowledge of the physical layout of the prison, then you debrief them, be it from former prisoners, be it from former members of the Panamanian Defense Forces or active members of the Panamanian Defense Forces, essentially anyone who had access to the place.
Information about that prison structure was provided to an extraordinarily talented three-dimensional fine-scale modeler who at the time worked in the agency. The modeler's name was Kenny Lane.
I needed overhead photography, I needed line drawings, I needed sketches. Any information about the prison would be valuable in producing the model.
How long the hallways were, how wide the hallways were, where Kurt Muse's cell was. The nature of the whole physical layout of the interior of the prison was obviously crucial from a planning standpoint.
Kenny Lane used the information gathered by CIA operatives to begin work on a three-dimensional model of Modelo Prison.
When you're talking about height of walls, thickness of walls, a measurement from one end of the building to the other, things like that, you have to be very accurate, and you have to have confidence in the analysts that support you that these figures are correct.
Time was of the essence. Back in Panama, things were quickly getting worse. A failed rebel coup only served to enrage an already unstable Noriega. The plans for a rescue attempt were escalated. Kenny Lane quickly completed his nearly perfect three-dimensional model of Modelo Prison.
And then from that, reverse engineering, a set of blueprints were made, and this was taken to a military facility in the United States where a full-scale mock-up was constructed.
U.S. military special operations forces used the full-scale mock-up to tirelessly rehearse the operation. Everyone knew the stakes, and they were getting higher by the day.
They posted my executioner at my cell door. Shoot me if someone attempts to rescue me, or when Noriega gives the order.
In putting together a mission to rescue him, to say that speed was of the essence and timing was crucial would be gross understatements.
The corporal came down and looked into my cell. I said, "Corporal," I said, "tú me matarías. ¿Tú me matarías en serio? Would you really kill me?" He looked at me, just cold as you could imagine. Go, "Sí, señor." "Yes, sir."
It had to be fast, it had to be sudden, it had to be done before they were alerted.
On December 20th, 1989, at 12 midnight, Special Ops forces flew into Modelo Prison. A second chopper, serving as a deterrent, circled the area and pummeled ground forces.
The rescue force landed by helicopter on the roof of what is referred to in Spanish as the Cárcel Modelo.
I heard a heavy machine gun, like a .50 caliber machine gun. Just a doo, 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 doo. About a lot of rounds. All I could hear was my heartbeat. Like a basketball. And I heard someone running up the steps. I go, "Oh my God, oh my God." It's the order to shoot me. Hall starts filling with smoke, that thick, acrid smoke. And then I see these little white lights are like darting through the smoke. And as the explosion across the street lights up the cell, I see this guy, he has a funny looking helmet on, funny looking goggles, funny looking uniform, funny looking weapon. And I'm all scared. And he screams at me. He says, "Moose!"
Moose, are you okay? Back against the wall. Stay back in the corner until I tell you to come out. Move!
Machine gun fire, bombs going off, everything you can imagine, rockets, everything across the street. And inside my prison you hear boom.
Get out here! Put on this gear, do what you can. Put that over your head. Quickly, quickly, we gotta get out of here. You're gonna follow him out. You're not gonna let go of him. Wherever he goes, you go. Don't let go of him. Ready? Go.
I'm in my hole for 9 months, and you got a guy that's speaking your language and one of your soldiers from one of your countries, and he's there, and he's telling me he's going to take me home. I can't describe the feeling.
The soldiers successfully escorted Muse from the prison. The entire mission lasted only 6 minutes and kicked off the invasion of Panama, Operation Just Cause.
This was in the middle of a combat zone, and the people of Panama were cheering as we were driving down their neighborhood in the middle of a war to oust General Noriega.
They're wonderful people, and our issue of disagreement was not with them in any event. It was with one man, General Noriega, and with one institution, the Panamanian Defense Forces.
Noriega was eventually captured and brought to the United States to stand trial. Muse was successfully reunited with his family.
The CIA had no responsibility for me, none. But the agency did come forward and take responsibility for me and did all they could to provide the intelligence to my rescuers to get me out.
The country of Panama had also been given a fair chance at democracy.
We went in to rescue him. This was priority in my mind. But also, we did restore democracy in Panama on Just Cause, and also we did bring to justice an infamous narco-trafficker.
General Manuel Noriega is currently serving a 40-year sentence in a federal prison in Miami. Kurt Muse is a free man. The operation until now, one of the hundreds of unspoken successes made possible by intelligence information provided to policymakers by the CIA.
In the case of the rescue of Kurt Muse, intelligence, both from the military's own sources, augmented by CIA, all that information, all that intelligence, all that planning made the operation be successful.
As the United States forges its way into a new millennium, the CIA continues to stand as America's front line.
The CIA needs to be the nation's first line of defense.
For these lame brains that say we ought to get rid of the intelligence community or put it under the State Department or diminish it in some way, I just think they don't understand the real world. They don't know what we're up against.
Do we make mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we screwed up things. Yeah, undeniably. Are our failures more touted and more recognized than our successes? Well, of course, because by their very nature, we can't talk about the successes.
I don't think that CIA has done much beyond nudge history in one direction or another over the years. Not many organizations or people can claim to have, no matter how slightly, altered the course of history.
At the end of the day, our director will stress, when all else is said and done, our job is to protect the lives of Americans and to protect the interest of the United States.
If we can make that transition from the post-Cold War world to this new world of many challenges and ensure that the best and brightest come to work here, ensure that our technology is really up to the task, ensure that the leadership of this organization cares about its people and its mission and imposes the standards of excellence that the American people expect, if I can leave the place better than I found it and prepare it to go on, then I think it will be a success. And each day, there's a challenge to get to that objective. But I think we can get there, and I think most Americans want us to get there.